The major conversation this morning borders on the 500 million naira, 500 billion naira that the president has sent to the Senate House for signing, and he wants to borrow this money to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. According to, of course, news all over, President Bola Tinubu has asked the House of Representatives to amend the 2022 Supplementary Appropriations Act to provide 500 billion naira to fund palliative measures against the impact of fuel subsidy removal. The request was convened in a letter read by the Speaker of the House, Tajudeen Abbas, during the plenary on Wednesday. The Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress have, however, turned down the 500 billion naira proposed by President Tinubu, stating that it is grossly inadequate. Of course, as to assuage the hardship confronting workers sequel to fuel subsidy removal, and they are demanding a 300% salary increase to enable workers cope with the challenges imposed by the deteriorating economic situation that came with the removal of the controversial fuel subsidy. To have this conversation with us this morning is Mr. Matthew Oluku. Good morning, sir. You're welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, this conversation has lingered. Actually, it's not very new. I think the only thing new about it is the change in figures. But for a very long time, we've heard about $800 million.
Yeah.
That was what we heard initially, and now we're hearing 500 billion naira, which is like an equivalent of the, if you change the dollars to naira, almost there, but it's not exactly the same. First of all, how do you react to this new development?
First of all, I think Nigerians are not even asking questions. For one, the issue of $800 million that was secured by the last administration was strictly tied to cushioning the effect of the subsidy removal. Because the last administration already envisaged this situation where this government will remove the subsidy. And at the time, even the National Assembly endorsed it. So why I say people are not asking questions is, I think this government should be able to tell us what is happening to that $800 million. Is this still going to be used for the purpose for which it was secured? Or do they have intention of appropriating it for another project? We should know. Then secondly, it's a good thing that Mr. President is going to National Assembly to actually make it an appropriation issue so that he doesn't run far of the Constitution acting arbitrarily. But again, like you just cited NSC and TUC, that they have said is grossly inadequate, even as I agree with them that it is grossly inadequate. Because if you look at the last poverty index of National Bureau of Statistics, it tells you that about 133 million Nigerians are extra-dimensionally poor. If you now look at 500 billion naira as perhaps being divided by 133 million Nigerians who are on that poverty level, you are looking at just 3,597, which is actually grossly inadequate. But again, I do not want to see NSC and TUC as a body that is, for me, they have lost the moral standard to fight for Nigerians. Because people had expected that when they threatened to embark on strike upon the subsidy removal, it's a good thing that you do engagement. But people would have expected that you extract reasonable commitment from the federal government before suspending the strike. Because the way it stands, I understand that at the time federal government went to industrial court, there was a restraining order compelling the labor unions not to embark on the strike. But the reason they adduced as to why they suspended the strike was a negotiation with the federal government, not based on the court judgment. It's based on, if it is based on the court judgment, I would say they have no option, their hands were tied. But the situation where you have not been able to extract reasonable commitment from federal government, you chicken out. So I don't think there's anything they will do now that anybody will take them seriously.
Okay.
But on the part of the government, I would say that money is grossly inadequate. But again, let me quickly say that if we are thinking in the right direction as a people, as a government, what we need to do is to provide alternative means of transportation, not this direct cash transfer. Because the problem that is occasioned by the subsidy removal is hike in price of transportation. In the same vein, if you have a system where you convert some of the vehicles that run on fossil fuel to run on compressed natural gas, you take away attention from using fossil fuel.
Okay, this is one of the major stories trending on the newspapers this morning. We're going to get the opportunity to actually buttress it. It's part of the major conversations, but we're still looking at the stories that are trending on the newspapers this morning because we're still on that segment. Now, another story that it actually broke yesterday, but it also stemmed into today, the killings that happened in Plateau State. Well, we've had these violence and banditry and all these kind of stories, stay with us for a very long time. And it's almost becoming as if people are helpless. There is nothing anybody can do. And it's just like if it happens in your city, then maybe that's your own share of whatever it is that Nigerians are having to deal with now. We also have, I want to compare it to the situation that we have in the Southeast where people are forced to stay at home, and if you do not stay at home, you get your vehicles vandalized, you get your shops or your offices vandalized, and even violence meted out on you as an individual if you ever dare to cross the street. And this happens in several regions of the country. We have new service chiefs, new promises of how that the security situation in the country is going to be saved, salvaged, and made better. Yet, Jos Plateau State has been like the center of this kind of conversations. It's almost as if every 2 years something must happen in Jos. How do you react to that?
I think the reason we see it reoccurring is because there is no arrest and prosecution. Because the essence of prosecuting people is to act as a deterrent to others. But again, I think the situation in Jos, Southern Kaduna, and Benue is similar. Because it has to do with clash between herdsmen and host communities. And even Mr. President adduced to that fact where when he had meeting with the governors of 1999 yesterday, where he was advising Nigerians to live in harmony. Even as the advice is reasonable, but I think as a government, at a time like this, what we need to do is to identify, arrest, and prosecute. Do you understand he spoke tough? He gave a marching order to the security agencies to fish out the attackers for purpose of prosecution. But again, I think as citizens, we don't have, you don't expect anybody to take laws into his hands. So we can only expect that Mr. President, the order will be carried out, because otherwise, where else do you want the citizens to look up to for help? Because as the president, he goes by the name president and the commander of the armed forces. And we have numerous security agencies. We have police as the prosecuting agency. So for me, I think the earlier we start identifying, arresting, and prosecuting attackers, the better. Until we do that, we are not going to see an end to these clashes. I understand there could be other, people could explore other areas of conflict resolution. But as a government, you must arrest attackers as a way of stopping as a way of discouraging other people from attacking. Because even as I discourage reprisal attack, if there is no prompt action from government in terms of identifying, arresting, and prosecuting, people who feel aggrieved, who are not happy with the attack, they want to revenge. So that is why it's good that the government should quickly move in, identify the attackers, prosecute them.